Welcome to the Camera Brains Filmmaker Q&A series. My name is Chase, and I'm the creator of the @camera.brains community on Instagram, showing you the cameras behind your favorite films, commercials, and music videos. I'm pumped to have Rowan Biddiscombe on as our guest. He's a filmmaker based in London and Lyon and works on commercials for some of the biggest brands as well as narrative projects. So we'll keep this pretty freeform. I know you had some industry stuff you wanted to talk about. I just want to let the audience know real quick that we're filming this also as a YouTube video, and you are actually using your Arri Alexa Mini to film it on. I think that's pretty baller.
Don't say that. Come on. That was told to you so in confidence.
Anyway, we're expecting a pretty crispy result.
Oh, God.
Let's just say that. So to start us off, I want to kind of get a general sense of how you started. Like, what's your origin story if you had to sum it up? Like, how did you even get into the industry?
Oh, God, people are so bored of hearing my origin story, that's for sure. Basically, I've been skateboarding for a lot of time when I was younger, and obviously sort of was surrounded by cameras and, you know, people making videos and edits and that kind of stuff. But I did that for quite a long time, and actually, even though my friends were doing that, I had no interest in filming, taking photos, or anything. It's kind of weird, really. It sort of totally passed me by. After a while, when I was about sort of 18 or 19, I sort of transitioned to snowboarding. Ended up going to the mountains and sort of working crappy jobs and learning that sort of stuff. And I quickly realized that everything I was doing was sort of, I really liked sort of freestyle snowboarding. That was my interest. And I felt like sort of nobody really knew what I was doing at home. So basically ended up buying a camera, ended up filming a friend of mine who would film me. I would do the edits, and then I guess I just got into it, really enjoyed the sort of like putting music together with the visuals, and it just sort of spiraled out of control over the next, that was, I don't know, coming up on like sort of 12, 13 years ago that I really started doing that. And that was really like the beginning of YouTube. I remember it as being just pre-Facebook. I remember that Facebook came out, well, maybe it had been out before, but I got Facebook kind of as all that was happening, as I was getting into I'm talking crappy video cameras, by the way. I'm talking like, you know, $100 jobbies, you know, just dad camming it. And then, yeah, from there, basically, I was sort of filming little things and editing them. And as I kind of moved away from snowboarding, I guess I was still into it, and I was still sort of like doing it because it interested me. And some of my friends were in the sort of action sports world, and they sort of started asking me, oh, do you want to come and like film this thing? Like just for free, you know, just for go and film some freestyle motocross or something like that. And then, yeah, it just sort of, just snowballed. People started seeing the videos, and they'd say, oh, do you want to come and do this? And then someone offered me some money. And that was the turning point, really. The first time somebody offered me some money, that I was like, whoa, I've been doing this just for free, just for shits and giggles. And here we are, like someone wants to give me money for it. It was like game changer. Overnight, you know, it was like a light bulb moment of, wow, this could be a thing. This could be where I make money. At the time, the first time I got a paid job, I was working in a skate shop, earning maybe about 50 British pounds per day. And then when somebody calls you up and says, oh, hey, do you want to like come and film this thing for 200 English pounds? Which at the time, I was like, oh my God, 200 pounds, that's the most money I've ever heard of. Yeah, it was like kind of mind-blowing to me. And then, yeah, from there, progressed, went further forward, did a lot more kind of action sports stuff, realized it was quite difficult to make good money from that. So kind of dipped my toe into kind of more corporate stuff, like bigger brands, and got somewhere with that, but realized it wasn't really what I wanted to do. And then I guess just over time, I learned more, got better at what I was doing, and yeah, and here we are.
That's cool. And so you were doing these smaller jobs, kind of finding your way in the industry. What was your big break moment? Was there like one job that kind of was at that next level that kind of catapulted you into that next stage, or was it more of a gradual process to where you are now?
It was like totally gradual. I mean, at the time, every job was like, oh my God. And I still feel like that now. Every job I do that's like bigger than the last one, I think, whoa, okay, this is the one. Like this is the one that's like, you know, sort of the next big step. And I feel that a lot actually. The first one that I, you know, got paid for, I think that was the biggest kind of moment of realization for me. The funniest thing about that first job was that I kind of got asked to do it based on videos that I had made before. So I say someone, is a guy who's a very good friend of mine now. He's called Tim Walker. I've sort of filmed so much stuff with him over the years. He's like a great person and really like sort of helped me get into this world. He's been a director for a long time, done a lot of like great ads and things like that. But anyway, he hired me onto this thing because he'd met me and he'd seen the videos I'd done. But I genuinely had no idea what I was doing. At that point, I'd been filming stuff just like no concept of what settings were on the camera. I had no idea what white balance was, what shutter speed was, the difference of ISO or frames per second. Like, I had no idea. And I remember on that shoot, I was filming something at like, I can't remember, it must have been like 2000 shutter speed. Because I was like outside and I didn't have an ND filter and I didn't know what an ND filter was. And I think he kind of looked at the camera and was like, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing that? Like, as if I had some kind of like background in understanding of what these things actually meant. All I knew was to just twiddle the knobs until it looked good. And that was that. I remember that being a moment of like, oh, okay, there's more to this than I sort of had given it credit for beforehand.
Yeah. And along that journey, I'm curious, you mentioned you worked with some big brands. Was there a brand that you worked for sort of early on into your rise that made you really think, oh, wow, I've made it if I'm working for this company doing this kind of ad?
Back in the day, I did a lot of stuff with Red Bull. And that was a really good one. Like, if, you know, chuck that into conversation, like, oh yeah, I'm working for Red Bull at the moment. You know, your mum's like, oh, I've heard of that. Brilliant. Yeah, that's really good. That was always a good one, I think, that felt like they were a kind of bigger company, and I think they sort of appreciated a slightly higher level of production. Whereas before that, I'd been sort of giving higher level production, but people didn't really know what it was.
Yeah, I'd love to actually talk on that a little bit more about, because I've noticed that like in my come up too, like I'll put my all into a project just to make my portfolio better, but maybe they don't necessarily understand like kind of what's going on. How do you balance that over investing into a project and also making money at the same time? Like, how did you navigate that?
I mean, in the early days, you just do it for you. You take some crappy, I don't know, I did some really crappy jobs. Like, let's just get that out of the way. The worst of the worst, you know, like sort of doctor's surgery, corporate videos, that kind of stuff. But you try to make it the best you can just for you. You just don't even care about those people. I think the further you get down the path, I think you do have to start making decisions about who, it's who, like the production company or the directors or whatever, how much you care about them. And then also it's like the client, like how much do you care about them? It's like, if you're gonna end up, I would try not to, but if you're gonna end up doing like a job for like Shell or something, you know, sort of promoting big oil, you're like, well, how much do I wanna give them out of my own time when they don't really deserve it? Right. Whereas if it's, you know, a video for like a good cause, or at least these days a semi-good cause, you know, something that at least sits on the right side of being good, then I think you can say, hey, well, I'm happy to do this. I don't actually mind that much about the money. I'm just happy to be here. I'm happy to help you guys. And I think it's a kind of good cause. I've done a few of those things in my life, and you always come away from them feeling like that was worth it. And I think the more you can do of those, the better. Because I think if you do too many of the like bullshit ones, you definitely do get a bit sort of dragged down by it. Yeah,
and I have a question about the creative side of those different types of jobs. So like maybe the bigger budget corporate jobs or commercials, and then maybe the smaller but more passion projects. Do you find that with that bigger budget on a commercial, you're able to exercise more creativity, or is it more pinned down by what the brand wants, and on the smaller projects, that's when you get to flex your muscles?
I've got to say that is a tough question. And from my experience, the bigger the shoots get, the more crew there are, the more money there is involved. I personally find it like pretty difficult to. My background is being kind of spontaneously create. I'm doing that a lot. I'm going to stop doing that. There you go.
That's all right.
Just done.
Well, the air quotes are nice.
Well, I'm actually here. I'm doing the quote, so I don't need to do that. I feel. What was I saying? I think.
Like when you have more crew and stuff.
My background was like a bit more spontaneous creativity, which is difficult when you're getting to a position of like you've got heavy schedules, and if things go over or you miss a shot or whatever, it's like not acceptable. You know, back in the day, it was like, oh, you know, just get the best shots you can, and if they're good, then great. If you don't get good shots, well, just cut those out and whatever. I think now there's a lot more kind of pressure and expectation that everything's going to be good. And I think when that comes, it's hard to be like, oh, maybe we should like do this crazy thing. Or how do you even do that before the shoot? You kind of need to have that moment of, oh, maybe we should like do this crazy thing a week before you're actually doing the shoot, which I think is a skill in itself. You're kind of changing the spontaneous creativity into sort of planned spontaneous creativity.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And would you say there's like an ideal crew size or an ideal budget range that allows you to be the most creative while not sacrificing the tools you need and the people you need to actually, you know, be spontaneous and make crazy ideas work well?
What is that? Oof.
Or just like in your experience, yeah, has there been a shoot that you've been like, oh, this really works well?
I've got to say, it depends where you are, and it depends the people that you're working with, because I have worked in certain places where you can have a massive crew, but everyone's just like on one, just doing everything that they're supposed to be doing immediately. Whereas I've been in other places where there's sort of a sort of lack of urgency. I've got to say, the few times that I've worked in America, I feel like there is a bit more of a sort of casualness about things. Like it's more of like, it sounds terrible to say it, but more like a sort of tradesman attitude of like, on a certain level of job anyway, that people are kind of like, oh, well, you know, it's not my job to be rushing around and doing stuff. And that is cool to a degree, but flip that, I did a job in Egypt, and oh my God, the people were like, mental. They were just like, anything you want, let's do it right now, let's get it done. And you hear that in other, not just Egypt, but other places kind of like that, where maybe they're not as fortunate to have as many big productions going on, that when they are there, their attitude is like, yeah, let's send it.
Yeah, that's great.
Which is cool, and you get a lot done.
Is amazing, yeah.
Yeah, you get a lot done. It's surprising.
Interesting.
I'm sure that exists too in America, but I do feel it's like, as the bigger the sort of the whole industry gets, the more strict things get, which actually is a whole nother topic. And I did want to talk to you about this.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
There's a really good Instagram page in the UK. I think it's called Brit Crew Stories. And basically they've just been posting a lot of these stories from crew members from pretty big shoots. I get the feeling it's all anonymous, but they're talking about just kind of like bad things on set and how things can escalate into sort of bad situations. And we've seen a few of them, you know, recently with like the gun thing on that shoot. That's like, that happened because of, you know, people stretching the budget, stretching too much, and people having to do 5 different jobs or whatever. And it's a really good page because it sort of talks about those things, and I think it's trying to highlight it, get it into the minds of producers and the people at the top of these shows, so that hopefully something can be done about it. I've got to say, in my level of shoot, it's a lot easier to keep a rein on those things. You know, they talk about some sort of like on-set bullying and, you know, things not being right. I feel like on the shoots at the kind of level I'm doing, it's a lot easier to be like, well, one, that doesn't happen, I don't think, very often. And if it did, it would be a lot easier to say, no, you can't do that. Whereas I can imagine if you're shooting flipping Jurassic Park or something, and you've got like, I don't know how many thousands of crew, difficult to keep a hold on that. And I think, so that's what they're trying to do, trying to like sort of rein that back in, make the sort of working hours more reasonable, make everyone like, when you think about how much work we actually do on shoots, and I think about sort of the sort of normal jobs that people do often, you kind of think, wow, we do go for it obviously we get a lot of time off, and that's great. But at the same time, when you're actually shooting, and especially these people that are working on like TV series and stuff, where they're just like, I don't even know how much they do, like 12, 13-hour days every day for like months. Mental. Don't know how they do that.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. And just to clarify, like when you say your level of shoot, what kind of size is your typical shoot?
It really depends. You know, it can go from anywhere from like 10 crew up to sort of 60, 70 crew, depending on what the shoots actually are. I definitely feel like the smaller ones I do tend to enjoy more, just because you're a little bit more freestyle. But then at the same time, if you want to do big stuff, you want to do like cool, bigger things, which I am interested in, you need a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely.
It's impossible to do that, like with less people.
And I have a question about how you would kind of qualify your role in the production. Would you call yourself a DP or a cinematographer? How closely do you work with the creative side and the brief, or is it mainly that director camera op relationship that you're more into?
I mean, first of all, what do you think the difference between a DP and a cinematographer is?
Well, I think it depends on, people have different descriptions of it, but I would say, like, I think Roger Deakins, just to give a famous example, he calls himself a cinematographer. I've met DPs who are more just super into the camera and not thinking about maybe the shot as much and more leaving that to the director. But I'm curious what your experience with that is as well, because you definitely know more than I do.
Well, maybe. Who knows?
No, definitely.
Yeah, that is an interesting one. I've never really thought of the kind of the difference between those two words. I just always sort of interchange them, really. So like, what do you put on your Instagram profile? I don't know.
Yeah.
I personally only felt like I became a DP when somebody said, do you want to DP this thing? Before that, I didn't even know what it meant. I didn't even know what those two letters represented. So to me, I would use those words interchangeably, but if Deacon says it's, you know, one way, then okay, I can go with that. But for me, you talking about like the creative connection, for me it's like, I would say I'd like to have input over all of it, really. I love to be involved, you know, earlier rather than later, to say, oh, this could be cool, that could be cool, why don't we try this? That being said, I think if you work with directors that are, and I do like this, if I work with a director that is very sort of strong in what their vision is, then I actually do quite enjoy that sort of take a step back and say, okay, you're going to focus on exactly what the kind of framing is maybe, and I can just focus on bringing it up in terms of just its overall look with lighting or tweaks more than anything. I actually really do a lot of like sort of Steadicam stuff with a friend of mine, Justin Steadicam, if you wanted to check him out on Instagram. But we do a lot of these one take Steadicam music video things, and I really love not having the camera sometimes, just watching the monitor, like kind of looking how we can improve any little areas, how we can like bring this up, bring that up, and that actually is one of my most enjoyable things, to be honest.
Definitely, because if you can focus just on one thing and not have to worry about the technical side always, it can free you up to think bigger like that. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the post-production side. Do you like to get your hands dirty, as it were, in that area with the color grade and the edit, or is, depending on the size of the production, what's your role in that? What do you like to do?
Well, I'm officially retired from editing. I made that decision a few years ago. It was the bane of my life and I hated it. But I think that's because I was always editing kind of my own projects, and when you're doing like kind of lame projects and there's a million changes that come back from the client that you don't agree with, and it's just like, oh God, I hate this. But when you're on things where you have more creative control, for example, I don't know if you would have seen the G-Shock thing.
I love that. Cool. That was beautiful.
Thanks, man. Yeah, well, that's something that, like, coming out of lockdown, and actually this is good going back to what you were talking about with how much do you, like, give a project that you kind of, like, believe in. That was a project where basically they said, pretty much, what do you think? What do you think we should do? And I was like,
Oh, that's
well,
great.
yeah, and I basically had the sort of freedom to just say, oh, this is what I think is cool. Let's just do that. And so there was a lot of planning involved. I did like a whole, I don't know if the animatic is the right word, but basically I've done it a few times before where basically I go through loads of edits, loads of other sort of reference material that I really like, cut out specific shots that I think are cool, and then basically make the edit that I want to make out of individual shots of other things.
That's very interesting. Wow. Where do you look for that inspiration? Just like Instagram and
the internet, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, so,
okay,
you know, if you're
cool.
doing something for G-Shock, it was like, I know they've got like a surfer that they want to shoot. I know there's like a weightlifter, like gym guy they want to shoot. I know there's like a parkour guy and a BMXer. So, you know, you just go onto, usually Vimeo I find is better to find good quality stuff. And then, you know, just search those keywords, like go through, try to find the best looking things you can find. It doesn't always work that easily. Some things are easier to find than others. But then, yeah, find some references, pull them in, and then at least you can get like an idea of like how it can kind of feel. You kind of put a track on there, you kind of like basically make the whole edit, and you're like, okay, I kind of get the vibe now. So then when you're shooting, there's no doubts. There's no doubts of like, oh, is this gonna work? Like, is this like spinny round thing, and then like that's gonna cut into, is that gonna work? Maybe if you're an amazing director, which I am not, then maybe you just know that that stuff is gonna work. But for me, it really helps to visually see it and say, oh, this is what we're going for. And I hope that, you know, looking at that edit, you can see that it's quite cohesive and everything kind of fits together. And that's pretty much like, that was like the maybe second draft. It was just done.
Wow.
That's the other beautiful thing of working like that, is that basically, I'm sure that's how they do movies. They already know exactly how it's all going to go. So pretty much you slap it all on the timeline in the way you'd sort of planned it, and then it's just done, pretty much.
That's awesome. Do you usually storyboard also, or do you use this technique a lot? Because I've never heard of it, but it sounds really useful.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on what you're trying to do. I guess some things are easier than others to get those reference videos, reference clips or whatever. I've done it a few times, and actually the few times I have done it are the times when the video's been the most successful. So
that's very interesting.
Take what you want from that. Storyboards doesn't tend to be like me. I would say that's more, you know, whether the director's after that. I will push for that because I really like it. I think it's really helpful to have that, but yeah, it doesn't always happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to circle back to something we were talking about a little earlier about finding those people who share your vision. Like it sounds like G-Shock was, you know, saw your work and understood like you're the guy for the job. Let's trust you and your creative vision and make something cool and give you the budget to do it. How did you stumble into that circle of clients that feel the same way about the quality, and they want that quality, they want that kind of cinematic feel? Because there's so many companies out there that just don't get it, will never get it. How did you kind of come into that? You know, I know people have very different answers to this, but I'm curious what your story is.
Yeah, that is a classic question of like, yeah, how do you find those clients essentially? So a lot of luck. Like trying to, as much as possible, never burn bridges. I think that would probably be my best bit of advice there, like, because anything can come from anything that happened before. And I think most of my work, particularly like, you know, some of the stuff that I really like, came from little jobs that I did time before. Something changed, someone moved to a different company, and then they said, oh, we need to do this thing, and like, oh, we work with this, blah, blah, blah. And then you get the message that says, oh, do you want to come and do this job? It's exactly what happened with G-Shock, in that I'd done a job for it was just a PR, it was just like a PR agency that like had G-Shock as a client, and they have a lot of quite cool brands, like Vans and I don't know who else, but pretty cool brands. And I'd done something for them in the past. I can't remember what it is, but the girl, Liv, who I sort of co-directed the G-Shock thing with, I had worked with her a few years before on a TV commercial, like a fashion thing. And we got on really well, like we had a good relationship. And yeah, I think she just immediately thought of me, and because I guess she thought, oh, Rowan's into action sports type stuff, which does happen a lot, which is hard as well as another thing, is like to, not get pigeonholed. I think like that, it's understandable why that happens, because people want to work with people that know what they're talking about. But at the same time, it can be a bit like, okay, I'm quite keen to not just shoot people running around for once. But so that's how that one happened. It was a real like a connection of a job that I'd done before, and then they remembered. And if you ask me about most of the jobs that I get, a lot of them are like that. I have a lot of like repeat work with people. I think, I try my best to be a friendly, helpful person, and to make people's life as easy as possible. And hopefully I think that means that people like to work with me and to keep that relationship going. But I think that would be my advice there, is like just trying as hard as you can to make people's life easy, so that they and obviously make the best product you can. But when it comes down to it and they're thinking, oh, who should we get for this project? They're thinking, oh, this guy's good at what he does and he makes our life easy. I think that's
great advice. Thank you for that.
It's not that easy to follow. It's not that easy to follow, because you get on shoots and it's stressful and there's a lot of shit going down, and it's like to stay that person who can just keep moving things forward and not melt in that situation. I think that's the thing that producers, directors remember and say, oh, actually, this is we're planning a difficult shoot. That's the kind of person that we need. And I think that's actually something, sorry, I know I'm sort of rambling here, but it's something that
great.
As I've gone further down the line, those kinds of things are part of your job way more than I ever thought. I think on the smaller jobs, only a few people, you're not really doing any sort of management, any sort of like management of the situation or anything. It's easy to be in control of it. Whereas when suddenly you've got like sort of, not necessarily under you, but when you're talking about, there's 5 guys in the lighting team, there's like 5 guys in the sort of like camera team, you've got like the like art department, you've got fashion stylists, like all sort of asking you questions, like kind of coming at you from all different angles. You need to be able to control that. You need to be, while you're trying to like set up a shot, you need to be like just sort of batting off these things, like, okay, yeah, you do this, you do that, do this, don't worry about that, don't get stressed out about that, it's not a problem, we can do that later. And that was never a part of my job back when I was rolling around shooting Red Bull videos. I just cruised around, did whatever I wanted, got paid. Whereas now it's like there's a lot more kind of people management. I think that I wonder how much of that is like taught. And as I'm sure you're guessing, I didn't go to film school, didn't do any of that stuff. I mean, did you?
No.
You didn't either.
No, I grew up on YouTube tutorials and just doing it, yeah.
Yeah, okay, good work, man. That's the way. But yeah, I think that's something that is criminally undervalued. That I think the more you can condition yourself to be better at dealing with those things, I think the easier your shoots will go and the more jobs you'll get in time.
Oh, that's awesome.
Maybe, who knows?
Yeah, no, I think that's
Seems
really great advice. Yeah, I really enjoy being on sets where the vibe is like that, and when I'm on my sets, I try to make it like that so everyone feels good. And of course, there's going to be problems that arise, but yeah, that's great, and I'll definitely be keeping that in mind when I hopefully get to those multiple crew member shoots.
Out, you sent me your links to your stuff, and I checked it out. It was great. There was one video on there, and I can't remember what it is or where I saw it, but I saw it somewhere else independent of your thing.
Oh, wow.
I don't know where it would have been posted, but I was like, I've seen that somewhere. So cool. That's a good sign.
Glad to hear that. I did have another question about set experience. I'm curious who you think the most underrated crew member is. Who's that person on the crew or the job on the crew who kind of glues things together or never gets the limelight, but it really makes the shoot that much better?
Oh, that's such a hard question to answer, because I think you could argue that everyone is that. Some days, like, I mean, a lot of the time I feel the biggest connection to your first AC. That's generally the person that I feel the most like, thanks, man. You really,
Yeah.
or woman. I actually had some amazing female first assistants that actually often are kind of a little bit more organized. Sorry, guys. Yeah. It is funny. That is an interesting one, actually, the difference between men and women in that role and how they both approach it in different ways, which I find fascinating. That it's, the same job, but it's just done in a different way that, isn't necessarily better or worse, but it's funny to see that. Some really great female gaffers out there these days as well, which is really cool.
That's
good to
awesome.
see overall a lot more women in the industry and, just sort of getting in there, getting it done, and hopefully, being treated as equals, which I think it is an industry for that, personally. I think if there was ever one for that to happen, it's this one. You can kind of be a bit of a badass, which is cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the creative arts have that, that je ne sais quoi factor where you can, is that more open. And now, of course, we are on Camera Brains, so we have to talk a little bit about gear.
Okay.
I'm super curious how you came to the Arri Alexa Mini camera that you're currently using right now and use on all your projects.
Someone just gave it to me. Like, I just, it's just an accident. Found it.
Found it on the side of the road.
Oh, man. It's a long old path of constant buying and selling. It's a bit like the, you heard the paperclip story. The guy that trades a paperclip, trades it for like a pencil and then trades that for whatever, and then he ends up trading it for a house. It was literally kind of like that. I started off, as I mentioned, in the early days with just crappy dad cam, handy cams type things. But as I started, I think the first camera that I bought that was worth money was a Canon 550D. Which I don't know what the equivalent would be now, but it's just the bottom end of the digital SLR.
Yeah, maybe like a Rebel, I think, over here.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I think it's maybe, it was about 300 or 400 English pounds.
Yeah.
That was the one where I didn't know any of the settings. That's that camera. At that era where I was just twiddling and just no idea of what I was doing. But basically, every time I earned money from jobs that I was doing, as soon as I had enough, I would sell the previous camera, buy the next best camera. So I think, if you want to know my actual timeline of cameras to the Alexa Mini, which, could be interesting for some people.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So it would have gone 550D. I sold that and got a 7D, which I don't think that was a full frame sensor on that one. I don't know.
No, I think it's crop, yeah.
Yeah, I had that one for a while, then eventually sold that and got a 5D Mark III. Which was at the time the ultimate camera. That's the good one. That's the one you want to get. There was not really, because at that time things like a Red or things like a Alexa Mini, they weren't even on my radar. I didn't even know what they were at all. The 5D Mark III was a lot of money for me to spend at the time, but it was everything I'd made from all these jobs. And it felt like it was important to me, goes back to that thing of most clients had no concept of the difference. They couldn't tell the difference. But for me, it was important to just try and get the best image, try and, just make things look as good as they could. So I had the 5D Mark III for a little while. And then I think from there, I jumped to the Sony FS700. Don't know if you know that camera.
I've heard about it.
Bazooka looking thing. It was ridiculous. I only had the screen on the top and it was kind of sort of had to hold it like that, but it had amazing slow-mo. That was the era of 200 frames per second slow-mo.
Oh, nice.
It was like, if you're going to shoot anything, shoot at 200 frames per second. Honestly, editing was just like scrubbing through this endless ooh. It was crazy. It was kind of like dubstep time as well. It was like early dubstep, everything slow-mo, get some wah. It was pretty funny. But then I think from there, an upgrade to that was I got a RAW recorder, the Odyssey 7Q. Got that, stuck that on the top of it, and then you got better quality and big screen, and that was pretty cool. Then I think from there, I was at that point I was doing a lot of jobs. I was working on a lot of stuff, and I was doing pretty well for myself. And I had the plan to buy a Red. I was like, right, I'm doing it. Wow. It. It's happening. I'd used I'd used it a few times. A friend of mine, a really great cinematographer actually called Jordan Buck. Check him out if anyone's watching this. He's mad skills, a lot better than I am at what I do. But he's like, I would say he's got sort of like 4 or 5 years further down the path than I am. And he had a Red for a while, and I would use it on certain things, and I just loved it.
By the way, which Red was this at the time?
It was a Red Dragon.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, there's a funny story about this. I think I'd used it maybe once, or no, or maybe I'd hired him to shoot with me on something. But basically, I'd done some job, some snowboarding thing, and then some guys who I actually work with loads right now. I do this documentary thing with them like a lot. But they needed someone with a Red camera to shoot something. And someone told them that I had one, that I owned one. And so they messaged me like, oh, we've got this job coming up, we heard you've got this camera and blah, blah, blah. And I don't know if this is good advice for anyone, but I basically just lied to them and was like, yeah, I'll bring my camera to your shoot, definitely. Called up Jordan, was like, hey man, I got this shoot and I think that I've got this camera, so like, do you reckon I can just like rent it off you for next to no money? And then yeah, basically went on this shoot, and I actually think maybe I hadn't used it before, because now I think back to it, I didn't really, all the like touchscreen, all the settings, I didn't know what was going on. But it was kind of a success, and that kind of led to, like I say, this was about 8 years ago, and I'm still working with those guys that I kind of
awesome.
lied to about the camera. And
hope they don't listen to this podcast.
Unlikely, but it doesn't matter. But what was I going to say? Yeah, so basically, I say basically all the time. I was borrowing that a lot, and my plan was to buy a Red Dragon, a used Red Dragon. I knew a couple of other people that had one, and I was like, that's what I'm going to do. Anyway, I don't know if this is like a worthwhile story to tell. I actually think it is, because it ties into investment in gear and how sometimes it's dangerous, and you can lose a lot of money. Sorry, Red, this doesn't favour you very well. So I had this plan to buy a Red, but pretty much just as I got the money together to buy it, I think maybe I had about 12 or 13,000 pounds ready to go. I'd done like a whole summer, we'd done this TV show, I just saved up all the money from it. Everything I earned, I just saved it all up. I was like, this is what I want, and this is what I'm gonna do. So pretty much as soon as I had the money together, Red announced the Scarlet W. Don't know what you know about them, but they announced that camera. And I got the email and I was like, done, that's the camera that I'm dreaming of. Deposit down immediately. Anyway, so a year goes past, no camera. Literally, they took a year to I was one of the first people to pre-order it. I mean, classic Red fashion, oh, we got this amazing new camera. Anyway, so wait a whole year. In that time, I bought an FS7 and used that for all the jobs that I was doing then. Didn't really want to, because I kind of don't like FS7s, but anyway, used it for that time. After about a year, Red sent me this email saying, oh, so we're still having problems with the Scarlet W, but we can actually offer you an Epic W at £10,000 discount. So it's supposed to be, I don't know what it was supposed to be, 25 grand, and then with accessories, I think it was meant to be 25, and then about 4 grand of accessories on top. Something like that, yeah. So it ended up costing about £19,000, which at the time I didn't have, but they made it out as such a great deal and a great discount. I was going to save 10 grand. I was like, brilliant, okay, great investment here. If I save 10 grand, I can probably use this camera for a couple of years and then sell it for probably the same money that I bought it for.
Ooh, yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Anyway, classic Red fashion, sorry to say. But literally a year later, after I bought that camera, which had tons of problems, all the color science didn't work. Every time I shot with it, I was like, oh, I just don't like the look of this at all. I ended up sort of figuring it out, but it took a lot of bad shoots, a lot of shoots where I was like, oh, I've got a Red now. People are like, wow, let's use the Red. And it actually kind of looked terrible, which sucks for you when you're really trying to make moves, go forwards, and you're like, there's something not right about this. Had this crazy green tint on everything, and there was something with it was the IPP2 pipeline that didn't work in Premiere. And anyway, about a year later, they discontinue the Epic W and make like a DSMC2 some 8K or so, whatever it was. So my camera after a year was like gone, not even on the website, just completely doesn't exist.
Wow.
And then after that, I think they dropped the price loads as well. In the end, 2 years later, maybe it was a year later, I actually bought a Red Weapon because I was like, the Dragon image is so much better than this 8K helium sensor. Bought that, and then after that tried to sell the Epic W. Just no one wanted it. Like, it was just like a bit of a joke at the time. And I ended up selling it like maybe 2 years later for about £10,000 less than I bought it for.
Wow.
Which, yeah, I made some money with it. I got some rentals out of it. Did I make 10 grand's worth of rentals from it? Unlikely. And it was purely down to Red's sort of over-promotional, over-hype, over like everything to be like, this is the best deal ever. And when you're sort of an emerging cinematographer or filmmaker, you lap that shit up. You're like, yeah, okay, this is what I need to be successful. This is going to change everything. And yeah, I mean, it helped put me in some certain places having that camera, but I have regretted it ever since. And I'll tell you one thing I don't regret is buying an Alexa Mini.
So was that right? Was that kind of right after your Reds?
No affiliations, whatever with Ari. I'm not like a fanboy or anything, but I can tell you this much. I bought it for X amount of money about 3 years ago. I could sell it tomorrow for more than I bought it for.
That's amazing. That's very rare.
That is a good investment. And maybe I was lucky, but when I bought it, it wasn't new. It was like still pretty old. It was like 4 years old at that point. That's like, it's old now. It's crazy really to think how popular it is and how much money you can still get for it on rentals. And it's just something to think about, I think, of like who you're giving your money to and how much money you're giving. I kind of think, oh, it's fine if you're giving it to like, let's say you're buying a Sony A7S or something for £2,000. How much are you realistically going to lose on that over time? 600-700 maybe? I think we can all probably stomach that in the scheme of what jobs can make us. But when you're talking about losing £10,000 because a company, I don't know what their problem is, but they're obsessed with sort of this overhype. I can't stand by that, and it's not cool. Ari makes a product, makes it good, and they're like, that's that. We don't need to make a new one next year. We don't need to. And I prefer that. So
yeah, and I heard too, like, even the bigger cameras, like the LF or the 65, they're just using more mini sensors and just putting them next to each other.
Yeah,
so it's crazy. Up. Yeah, it's the same sensor, and it's amazing. Yeah, I just recently shot an ad with it. Like one of my friends owns an Alexa Mini. Like nice. I don't know if you saw the Jansport one. That was the latest one I did.
I did just see that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I love that camera. It's so. I'm saving up. It's gonna take me a while, but yeah, I'm kind of curious what you think about. You spoke on it briefly, but about client perception or the kind of camera, the brand, how much it matters. Because like just me, and I know a lot of people who are thinking, what camera do I get to make my first kind of foray into the cinema world? And I was thinking, do I go Canon, like C70? I've used that before. I like it. Or do I do the Red Komodo? I've used that before. Pretty decent. How much do you think people care about the name nowadays?
For me, it was never really what other people cared about the name. It was two-part. It was, is it going to make my footage look better? Because that's number one, all I care about.
Yeah.
Am I going to look back at this video and say, oh, that looks sick? Like, that's what I want. That's what I want. I want to look back at the videos I've made and go, that looks amazing. Like, I don't want to look at them and think, I wish I'd done this or I wish I'd had that. I do think that anyway. But, you think, I wish I'd shot it on 16mm or something. But you just want to look back and think that was the best I could have done at that time, and that's the best thing I could afford. The second part to that is, how much money can it make me in terms of like rental, like with me? I'm not talking about renting it out to random people. I mean, on the shoots. How much extra money can I get by having this equipment? Because my idea always was to just try and get the most amount I could per day, you know, like as a day rate with stuff, as part of, you know, a business. At the end of the day, like, I love doing this job, and a lot of the time, don't tell anyone, but a lot of the time I do it for no money at all. But at the end of the day, it's a business, and you need money to survive. You need money to like shoot things and go to places and practice and learn and passion projects and buy equipment and all of these things. It costs money. So you have to be like a businessman as well. And so that was a big part of it. How much money will these investments get me on my day rate? And there are some cameras that may get you more than others. You know, something like a Red, you could buy like the worst Red. If you say to a producer that doesn't know anything, oh, I'm going to bring my Red, that'll cost you 300 quid a day. What do they know? If the end product is great, then it's like, well, what does it really matter? I'm not talking about like lying and cheating people here, but what I mean is like, if people don't care and you say this is the equipment I've got and this costs X amount of money, well then it's worth it, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true.
And so that's what I always looked at, just of like equipment that is worth money. I never really, there might have been a couple of times that having a certain camera or whatever meant that I got a certain job. You know, if someone's like, oh, we really need someone to shoot on a Mini in Lyon, where I am now, then yeah, I might get that job because of that equipment. But that is quite few and far between, really. A lot of the time it just goes back to making people's lives easier. If you can, with a producer, if you can say, hey, look, you don't need to go through a rental house and deal with all this like bullshit, I can just bring all the stuff and it's just done. They're like, thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's just making their lives easier. Yeah, and I did that a bit as well with like lights and lighting and stuff as well, that like there were things I was constantly trying to get hold of that I couldn't get hold of often, that then I was just, I should just buy it. I just buy it and then I've always got it. And as long as they're good quality things, they shouldn't really lose any money. Things like light mats, for example. Spent ages like trying to get used light mats, and I did in the end, but I could sell them tomorrow after 3 years for the same money. Just crazy.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. That's cool. So you have the Mini, that's digital. Do you ever dip your toe into the film side of things? Do you use that on brand projects as more a personal thing?
Well,
yeah, I'm curious.
I'm trying to, but it's hard. It's really hard to commit to it. I've tried a few times. I've had a couple of successes. I've had a couple of kind of failures. I bought a Bolex over lockdown.
Nice.
It's actually there. There he is.
Oh, there it is.
Just right
That's
there.
cool. Yeah.
A Rex 5 is that, and it's pretty cool. It needs to be serviced, really. I used it once and got some good results. Used it another time and it kind of like messed up a bit. But after using that twice, it makes it sound like I've got loads of money, but it just like I just work a lot and don't spend any money on anything other than investments, basically, and stuff. Because after using that, I loved the kind of feeling of it, that I bought an Aton XTR Prod. Don't know if you know what that is, but so it's like a on the shoulder 16mm camera.
Oh, got it.
Like, do you know what an Arri SR3 is?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's basically that, but
oh, cool.
Some people would say it's better. Depends on who you ask. Some people prefer one or the other, but they're the same kind of level.
Got it.
But it is amazing. You know, in comparison to the Bolex, which is like a joke, when you're trying to like, you can't see anything, you don't have anything's in focus, like you're winding it up the whole time, and you have to keep measuring exposures of things. It's like a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
You can get amazing footage, but it is very like, I hope I get amazing footage. Whereas when you use the Aton, just the viewfinder's so bright and crisp, and it's got like a sort of exposure meter in there as well, so you can just shoot anything. It's so quick and so easy. Obviously it shoots on bigger mags, so you get like a longer run time. Super cool. If you get an opportunity to use one, I would highly recommend it. it is just game changer over the Bolex. But going back to like how much do I actually use it? Not as much as I would like. It's finding that right project to use it on, and actually I've found a few times I've tried to do it in like a sort of multi-format type thing where you shoot a bit of digital and shoot a bit of film. I often end up feeling like that's the worst way to do it, because you sort of look at digital and it's such a kind of like a look in itself that then when you look at the 16, it's like it's kind of messing with your head a little bit. I almost feel like you need to just not see digital at all. Just go 16 all the way and hope for the best.
Yeah.
But using it is mad to think that people like shoot whole, films like that. Just you kind of know what you're getting, but you don't really know what you're getting. That is a crazy concept for me.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy.
On things that are really important. It's one thing doing it on like, oh, we're doing a fashion shoot and maybe we get some cool stuff, and if that doesn't work, then whatever. I think the fact that every shot like has to work and has to look good, I don't know how you deal with that. I've read multiple times people saying that people wouldn't sleep until they got the rushes back. I'm not surprised.
Yeah, that sounds pretty high stress. So to kind of wrap this up, I want to ask you one more question, and that's, what's next for you? What are your kind of career goals that you're working towards? Are you looking to do a feature? Are you wanting to do longer form narrative stuff? Like, what's your dream kind of going forward?
Who knows? It's just a roll of the dice every day. My plan is just to keep learning. That's the bottom line, really. I think if I had to give advice to anyone, it's like just keep trying to learn all the time. If you just keep on trying to do something different every shoot you do, then you won't really notice it because you're in it. And I'm often complaining to my girlfriend about this, that maybe I'm not as good as I should be at this point. And she's like, but look what you were doing, 3 years ago. Look at the difference of the quality. And you look at it and you're like, oh yeah, actually, I have improved quite a lot, haven't I? And I think that's an important thing to remember, that it's difficult to see in the moment, but I think over time you're always improving. So I don't necessarily want to achieve anything in particular. I just want to make sure that I'm like improving, always. Whatever the shoot is, try to do something different, try to do something better. And I know that in time I will achieve things that I never thought were possible.
Oh, that's great. I love that.
I hope so. But I do think that is true for everyone. If you just keep sticking it out, keep going, keep making things like as much as possible. That's a Spielberg-ism. Just keep making stuff, even if it's terrible. Just keep making it as much as you can. And then yeah, I think hopefully I'll end up somewhere that I'm happy with. Because I'm pretty happy where I am now. But I think I can go further, and that'll be cool too.
Well, I'm wishing you the best of luck in that. And where can the people find your work? What do you want to direct people to who might want to check you out, might want to hire you? Who knows?
I am notoriously bad at posting anything that I do. But I try to keep Instagram updated with the things that I think are good. That's probably going to be the best place. I imagine you can supply the good people, all 12 people, with a link to my complicated name, and then it's just the same as my website. But do what you want to do, guys. Don't. That is an important thing. A final thing to kind of talk about is comparing yourself to other people. Not to say that people shouldn't look at my work and say, oh, that's cool. But I think that's something we didn't really touch on, but I think it's like probably the hardest thing. I don't know if you'd agree with this, but looking at other people's work and saying, oh my God, like that is amazing. Like how the bloody hell do I do that?
I know, I got a lot of that running this account because I'm always finding really awesome shots and showing them. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, you post good stuff, man. Even I think that when I look at your account, I'm like, oh my God, like how do you make that? But I think, just following off on what I said, it's like just keep doing your own thing, keep trying to progress, try to have a critical eye of your own work and how you can be better. And one day you'll be the one being posted on Camera Brains. Have you
That's
posted
the
anything
dream.
Have you posted anything that you've done on Camera Brains yet?
Yeah, a few here and there.
You
But I'm,
have?
I'm very selective because I try to keep a high bar. So who knows whether I deserve it or not? But
Nice. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sure you do, man. You do good stuff.
Cool.
Brilliant.
Well, thank you so much for chatting. I really enjoyed having you on. I think people will really see this as a great resource going forward. I plan to keep doing these Q&As, and it'll just get bigger and bigger. So people will come back to see this episode, and they'll get a lot out of it.
I certainly hope so. Well, for all you future viewers, it's been a pleasure.
All right. Have a good rest of your day, man.
Nice one. Thanks a lot, Chase.